Hello. Thank you for being patient with whatever tech issue is happening here. I still have a big blank screen. I don't see anything. I do see a little, it's just black other than the studio.youtube.com with the link there. And a little microphone at the bottom that has green dots that make it look like you can definitely hear me. But via the emails that have been sent between over the past 10 minutes or so, it seems that you guys can see me just fine. So I don't need to see me. If you can see me, great. I just sent out a new link with, I just sent out a new email with the new live link. So if you, and finally we got some people joining. Thank you for being here on the new link. I'm glad that this is somehow working. Again, I can't see a thing. It's just a big blank screen. Do chat with me and let me know that you can see me, that you can hear me. As far as I can tell, you can see me. So, thank you for those who have returned. Super grateful. And again, apologies for these tech issues. So, I know I need a breath now. So, let's just start with a breath and exhale. And the point of that is to come back into your body. And this is a great example of the power of the practice. In when the tech is all going down and things aren't working the way you should hope for them to be or want them, you can always keep coming back to the breath. I really am not sure what's happening here because my whole computer just tried to go to sleep just now. I was just on a Zoom call with a client for about 90 minutes, so Zoom worked fine. I tested out FaceTime a few moments ago, but even still here now, I just have a blank screen. Anyway, let's talk about life and death. These to me are the two most important questions that we can look at. We are alive now. If you're here with me, if you're watching later, theoretically we're alive now. Right? And whatever this life is, to be able to live it is really the point. It's why I practice. It's why I do these videos. My goal for myself and for everyone is to actually live our lives awake, present, connected, right? So I wrote in today's email, I was inspired by a dying tub of baby kale lettuce that I had bought like about a week prior. And usually those tubs last a long time. And I was getting my lunch ready and making a salad, and there was nothing but death. And you could see death was permeating the box of lettuce, right? Like one leaf died and it kind of just starts to trail off and almost become a lettuce plague. And I'm in there trying to salvage the live pieces of lettuce, not just for my salad, just I don't want to waste anything. And I'm making myself laugh, thinking, get the death out, get out of the death, get out of the death. And this class becomes clear in my mind as this is happening, and that this is really the point, because as I'm sitting there with this mucky, wet, gross smelling leaves of baby kale. Well, I don't know if when my computer goes to sleep that you lose me or not. So it's interesting. So I guess it, like, my computer really isn't registering. The green light is on the camera. I don't know if you care about these details, but you're going to hear them because it's my stream of consciousness. It looks like the green light for the camera's on. Apparently you guys can see me. I can't see a thing. But normally when I stream YouTube, Facebook, FaceTime, Zoom, like the computer knows that I'm doing something. But here, I think I have it on like a 2 or 3 minute timer to go to sleep if I'm not using it. It keeps going to sleep. It's very interesting. All right. So you see me jut up here. So as I'm hands deep in this mucky, dying lettuce, it is so clear that this is not death. It's change. It's stinky. It's gross. But it's not death. The famous microbiologist who I quote often, Lynn Margulis, who was the wife of Carl Sagan. So he was, astrophysics, very macro. She was microbiology. She has a textbook in which she states, as a quote in the textbook, from a microbiological perspective, which when in with the baby kale, it's more or less a microgreen. She says, even though it seems as if mountains, and I'm going to butcher the quote, by the way, I'm just pulling from my brain. Even though it seems as if mountains and rivers and people have come and gone, in 100 million years, not one thing has passed away. And this is the point of view of science, right? This is the reality of existence, is that it's change, continual change on the most microscopic, the current word for the very smallest of things is like quantum, on the most quantum level, the most microscopic levels. Everything is life and death. But there is no life or death. Death is the source of life. Life is the source of death. There's actually no moment where it's life and then death. It's just continual change. And if you have some dead plant matter, right, seemingly dying plant matter, you know that is compost, that is actually you need all this dead, decaying matter to create new plants, crops, life. Life cannot happen without the seeming death. So then if you start to really think about this, the question comes up for me, at least, I don't know if you really are thinking about this, when does life begin? And when does life end? When does death begin? When does death end? Is there a hard line between them? And from the perspective of science, and from the perspective of Tao and Zen, we're going to look at Dogen a little bit today. There's a great quote. I'm restudying him right now. And there was a quote I came across actually this morning in my morning study. I came across a quote and I was like, oh, this is pretty on point for our class today. There is no life, there is no death. It just is. It's isness. Another name for the Buddha, and again, the word Buddha just means awake. He's not a god, he's not a man. He was a man at the time, but I'm Buddha, you're Buddha. This glass is Buddha. Buddha just means awake. Awake to this moment as it is, right? No separation, right? And another word for Buddha is the Tathagata, which one translation of is thusness. So I say isness, thusness, thisness, this. Thisness is the whole point of, well, life, death to me. Whatever is. Can you be it fully? And, it's interesting. There's an entire finger portion of Buddhism where the monks are admonished, their meditative practices, they just contemplate their own decaying corpse. That's what they meditate on. I hope that you guys can still see me. I forgot to, it's such a black screen, I didn't realize I had gone to sleep. So maybe you guys did lose me there for a little bit. I don't know. So I don't know when you lost me, but if you look, so there's, hopefully you at least could continue to hear me if it did go to sleep. There's an entire arm of Buddhism where the monks are admonished to contemplate, to visualize their decaying corpse. Picture bugs eating out their rotting eyes, right? Their skin falling off their bones. This is what they meditate, they sit with. It seems pretty dark on the surface, but it's actually really important work, because it's only in contemplating death that you can get past death. Because the biggest questions for us as humans is our death. The biggest threat, the biggest fear, the dying, the end of this life, the end of this ego, the end of this idea, the end of this thing that I want or a desire, right? That the death of things is such a visceral fear. And the point in contemplating death is to get through and over the fear, because there is another side, and that is life, right? And this is what the whole point of this is. So I'm going to read this quote from Eihei Dogen, who is my favorite Zen teacher. This is Moonin and Dewdrop, the writings of Zen master Eihei Dogen. And this is such a beautiful way. So he's talking about we went to sleep again. He's talking about this practice of not attaching to life, not attaching to death, which is the word, actually the direct translation of non-attachment, which is such a big theme in Buddhism, is emancipation, right? You're emancipated from life. You're emancipated from death. You're emancipated from these ideas that hold you back from actually living, right? And in this introduction, it's so brilliant. I didn't realize this, that the Japanese word for non-attachment or emancipation is todatsu, which means a fish slipping out of the net. Emancipated, you're free, you can go live. Emancipate yourself from the idea of death and you can go free, you can live. How do you emancipate yourself, though? It's through the idea of death. You must question deeply what you think it means to die, and conversely, what you think it means to live. It's in the deep questioning, the deep looking at it, intently, connectedly, that at some point it, to quote Stephen Mitchell from the second book of the Tao, it flits away as like a ghost that has lost its mission. It just dissolves, right? So the quote from Dogen is, he's talking about this emancipation, right? This freedom. Emancipation means that in birth, you are emancipated from birth. You're free from birth. In death, you are emancipated from death. Thus, there is detachment from birth and death, and penetrating birth and death. This is why the penetration of it is so key to the going beyond. I cannot see a thing. I don't know what you guys are seeing, so I don't know if you guys have been looking at the top of my forehead this whole time. I have no idea. Sorry. Thus, there is detachment from birth and death and penetrating birth and death. Such is the complete practice of the Great Way. The Great Way is living. Right? There is letting go of birth and death and vitalizing birth and death. Such is the thorough practice of the Great Way. Realization is birth. Birth is realization. At the time of realization, there is nothing but birth totally actualized. Nothing but death totally actualized. So, and I had studied this for years. I hope you didn't go away. Okay. I had studied this. I've been studying Zen and Buddhism and Taoism since the mid-90s, right? So I've been studying this and I knew it, or I thought I understood it intellectually, right? And I would sit with this, I would contemplate. I have journals upon journals where I really was like, what is life? What is death? One of my favorite Zen koans that really, really penetrated my own concepts, brought my ideas of life and death to failure, is this great koan that asks you, what was your face? What was your face before your mother and father were born? And it makes you go back, like, where did this face come from? Right? You look at a picture for me, you can see some semblance between me at I'm almost 50 now, me at 30, me at 20, me at 10, me at baby. But, it's not the same face, and it is the same face. And if you look at my mom or my sister or my grandmother, you can kind of see the same face, right? But they're all a little different and all changing. And so it asks you, what was your face? And you have to go back, right, mentally, or at least this is what I did, right? Is I go back mentally between generations of ancestors on all these different places. And it becomes clear that at no point can I find where I began, right? No point did I begin, and therefore at no point do I end. And this all became very intellectually clear for me, and especially with that koan, it really helped to open me up to that I did not begin and I do not end, right? And I really was feeling that in a heart body level to a certain extent. But it wasn't until 2019 where I had the distinct honor, really, to go. So and as an aside, like I have been doing long, extended silent retreats where you're just breath by breath, moment by moment, training yourself to be here, 7 days, 10 days, most of them are around 7 days. I did my first long extended retreat in 1998, and then I started doing them regularly, like more than once a year, in 2015. So it's almost been 20 years that I've been doing long, extended, regular silent retreats. And in 2005 is when I started doing the extended retreats. I lied. It was in 2019. So good 15 years later, I had the honor to go on a silent hiking retreat in Montana, in the Blackfoot Nation, which is just south of Glacier National Park. There's a teacher at the Minnesota Zen Center who I've referenced before. His name is Ben Connolly. Sensei Ben Connolly of the Minnesota Zen Center. He wrote a book that I love, called The Song of the Grassroot Hermitage, where he talks about, one of my first live videos, we did the poem from Sensei Ben Connolly's book. So he wrote this book, and he was on tour to the Zen centers around the country, kind of giving a little talk and showing his book. And when he was at our Zen center in New York, he talked about this, and this would have been a few years prior, that every year he does a hiking retreat in Montana, because he grew up in Glacier National Park. His grandfather, actually, they have a house in the middle of the park because his grandfather, I believe, had a home there before it became a national park. So he got literally grandfathered into having a home there. So he had just not only knowledge of the park in a way that most people don't, and access to things, but he was also a long-term camper as well, and hiker and backpacker, as well as being a teacher. And all of the teachings always go back to nature. Any question you have, look at nature. The answer is clear. So every year he does this hiking trip, right? And it's a 7-day silent retreat, but as opposed to sitting for 7 days, you're hiking, right? It's really a walking meditation with all of your stuff on your back, 7 days worth of stuff on your back, and the food for the group and everything. And we sit 3 or 4 times a day, morning and night for sure. And we'd stop a couple of times in the afternoon to sit, and he'd give a talk at some point each day. But mostly in silence, step by step by step, moving deeper and deeper. And because of the particular nature, the nature of this particular hike, every year he would do a different section. This year we were in the Blackfoot Nation, and he had gotten a very special, almost impossible permit to go on to this Native Indigenous territory. And because of that, we saw one person the first day, and then we did not see another person. So we were going deep into untouched earth, untouched by human. And every day we would hike deeper and deeper in. And, you're in nature, you're quiet, you're silent, you're doing this, you're living it. I hope I didn't lose you. Every day I hope I didn't lose you. I might have lost you for a bit. This will be a really interesting video to watch later, with it going silent and turning off like this all the time. So there could be whole sections cut out. This will be really fascinating. Thank you guys. A few of you have stuck on. I'm super grateful for that. Feel free to ask me questions. I don't know if the chat is working, because I got an email from someone on the first video that I couldn't figure out the tech issue with. I still haven't figured it out, but apparently you guys can see me. She said that she was trying to chat with me, but I don't think the chat's working either. Or at least I can't see it. We're hiking, and I think probably the second or third day into the hike, we get into what they would call a new burn. So the forests, they burn every year, and this was a new burn, and the bark was dark and black on the trees. Everything was burnt, but the bark was still on the trees, but it was dark and black. It looked like really good mulch, really good compost fertilizer. I didn't put that together yet, but so we're walking into this new burn, and that's stark and different. And then I'd say the next day, because we're moving the whole time, we get into a slightly older burn. And at this point, the bark has fallen off the trees, and the 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 trees are like these ghosts, these white ghosts coming up, because there's no no other trees, right? But these white ghosts that have come up. But all that black burnt bark had come off, and we get to this point in the woods, in the forest, and I cannot tell you, the green vegetation and flowers was like nothing I've ever seen in my life. And it was in that moment, and it actually continued as we went on day after day, but it was at that moment when I saw these brilliant flowers, so much vibrant color, thousands of them. And it was maybe up to my knee, all this growth and vegetation, right? Maybe up to my knee, all of this growth and vegetation. And it just astounded me that all of this life came from the death. That burning death of the tree and the bark is the rich fertilizer for the flowers. And no one went and planted these seeds. This is untouched land. And it was just so apparent to me in my bones at that point. All this stuff I had been studying for decades and contemplating became real. No life, no death, constant movement. And it took days of silence, years of silence prior, and thinking about this. And then on that hike, to just see it. And then the next day we got into, like, as we keep hiking, we get into older and older burns. And then all these white ghost trees had come down, and now it was all growing up higher. And you could just see how new forest was coming up, and then new trees. And you would come into what seemed like a middle growth forest, but it had probably been just a few years since the burn, and how all of the life is contingent upon the death. And that there was at no point that it was ever death. It's just constant change of form. And this was a life-changing moment for me. And the thing, how and why this conversation is such an important thing, one, for us to have, but later for you to actually sit with and contemplate and find your own thoughts on this, is it was at that moment that I truly I felt the shift in me, where I began to live more in a way that I had never lived before. I got more grounded in my practice and my presence. And it was almost automatic when that notion of death released itself, when the notion of death emancipated itself, because my idea of it had died. I talk a lot about with my clients about this idea of failure, how you must take your ideas to failure in order to see past them. And in the way I talk about failure, in the way that like a bodybuilder or an athlete would talk about failure. You cannot get your muscles to be bigger and stronger unless you take the current muscle fibers to failure. And you do that by working them, right? You don't ignore them. You push them. You push them to their limit until you can't push anymore. And then it fails, and then it recovers and builds stronger than it was before. This is the art of failure. And when you take your notions to failure, let me say this better. It's only when you take your notions to failure that you can begin to truly see beyond what you thought you knew. So it took me a long time for me to see through my idea of death and my idea of life, to move into the more that was beyond that. I really don't think my chat is working. If someone who's on there, I know there's a few of you on here, if somebody can send me a chat to see if anything comes up for me. I am not seeing any chats. But I'd love to hear other people's thoughts or experiences with this. I don't think my chat is working as much as I don't think my camera's working. My camera's working. The green light's on. If I was to open up Zoom right now, I know I could see myself. Yeah, there's no chats coming up. It's definitely a YouTube thing. If you got the email that I sent this morning, I went into how context is so important. And I used a line from the second chapter of the Tao Te Ching. And it's a beautiful little chapter. It's really quite lovely, lays out how our thoughts create our ideas, or how our notions, our judgments create. Well, let me just read it. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. So if there's no notion of beauty or of ugly, there's no beauty, there's no ugly, right? And this is such a great reality. So for anyone who's an artist or enjoys art, and we all to some extent enjoy art and music, right? Everyone sees it a little differently. Something that's beautiful to one person is ugly to another, right? It's not inherently beautiful or ugly. It just is. Now we're back to the isness, right? It just is, right? But the idea of beautiful creates ugly, because anything that doesn't fit into that notion of beauty then becomes ugly. Conversely, the idea of ugly creates beautiful. What's nice about this is we can all get this. This is easy, right? This is nice. The next line is where it gets a little harder, but he walks you in slowly with that. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. We all can get that. Yep. My mind creates an idea of beautiful. It makes other things ugly, beautiful. Okay. I can see how my mind does that. You can see how my mind tricks. So then he goes a little deeper and gets a little more challenging on this. In that he goes, when people see some things as good, other things become bad. And if you can get beautiful makes ugly and ugly makes beautiful, it makes linear sense that good makes bad and bad makes good, that inherently there is no good or bad. But when somebody hits me over the head with, a pipe out of nowhere, that feels pretty bad, right? When someone gives me a gift of something that I like, they paid attention to me and they know that I, love plants or nature, and they bought me beautiful flowers, right? Because they know that that's something that I love, or they know that I love lilies or daffodils, and they specifically went and got my favorites, right? Because they not only want to give me something that is beautiful or lovely, but they're also thinking about what they know that I love, and they go out of their way. Oh, that feels so good. No good, no bad. Wait, yikes. But you can see it, but it's a little harder to touch. But the point of this is, going back to the Dogen quote, we're emancipating ourselves from the notions of good or bad. So that if someone gives me flowers that are not my favorite, I'm not going to be like, oh man. I can be like, oh my God, you gave me flowers. And if someone doesn't give me flowers at all, that's not going to make me mad at them, right? It is really nice to get flowers, though. Just saying. But it emancipates me from the flowers. Just like if I can be emancipated from the idea of bad, I am emancipated from the idea of bad things happen to me. It doesn't mean that bad things and good things don't still happen, just my ideas of them aren't exacerbating them, right? Okay, and then I can be detached and I can be more connected with life and reality as it is, which is really, that's the emancipation, to live more. No matter what is happening in my life, I can live more. It's the whole point of all this, right? But then he goes full hog and he just kind of puts it over the top, right? The third line being and non-being create each other. So we already said how beautiful creates ugly and bad creates good, and that those are just ideas and they don't actually exist in reality. And then he goes full hog with being and non-being create each other. What is being and non-being? Being, life. Non-being, death. Life and death create each other. And the whole point of this is so that you can see the context. It's the language-based ideas of beautiful, ugly, good, bad, life, death that imprison us. The work of Zen, of Taoism, of Buddhism, of almost most all wisdom teaching is to emancipate us from these limited ideas, because they are limited. Because maybe the person who doesn't buy me flowers, though, sees me and hears me in a way that the one who did buy me flowers never did, right? Can I emancipate myself from the limited ideas of my mind, right? Maybe the person who hit me over the head and stopped me from moving actually prevented me from getting hit by a truck. I'm making stuff up now, right? It's all made up. It's all made up. That's really the point here. Being and non-being, life and death, are language-based words. They're words, they're ideas. They are not reality as it is. And the words are what keep us in fear and hatred and pain and suffering. Words are not reality. Words are not reality. Words are not reality. Reality is. And in this isness is no life and no death. There's nothing but change. If I'm stuck in the word, I can't be alive to this changing, vast, boundless moment. Go past the word, the beauty, the ugly, the good, the bad, the life, the death. Be here now. That's what all of this stuff is pointing us to live our lives. So that's what I got on this. Thank you for all the patience with all of my tech stuff. I still can't see a thing. I'm sure I've gone to sleep and blacked out on you a few times here, because it looks like my computer's gone to sleep every 2 or 3 minutes here. So I'm super grateful for all of you who stayed on. That's awesome. I'm so grateful. Still can't see a comment. We will see what happens. Thank you for being here. Join me on Thursday where we practice, because these words are words. They are empty. They're not reality. The practice of coming into your body, breathing. Check it out. Don't believe me. Take a breath right now. Feel the connection to your body. Feel that life. If you don't practice, your life gets away from you. It becomes a mind story that's mountains and rivers away from this reality. If you're in your head, you're not in reality. Life is here and now. You get one life that I know of, although it seemingly never began and never end, but in this form, this has a short time frame, a very small fractal. I do hope that you can practice being alive to it. Thank you guys for being here. Super grateful with all the tech stuff. I am way over time. I actually have to be somewhere soon. So thank you guys. Much love. Thank you. Have a great one. I hope to see you on Thursday in the live class. Bye.